Sun to fire into the surface of the asteroid and collect samples of the rock thrown up by the impact. Shortly after the spacecraft lifted off the surface, it will now continue to fly alongside the Ryugu asteroid for several more months, and JAXA is planning another landing in the summer to collect more samples before Hayabusa 2 returns to Earth sometime next year. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News, in Tokyo.
We can talk now to Dr. Megan Argo, a lecturer in astronomy at the University of Central Lancashire. Dr. Argo, thank you very much for joining us today. Let's talk about this mission from the Japanese Space Agency first of all. Talk to us about the significance of it and what might they hope to discover from this asteroid.
Well, it's a really interesting mission, and it's actually the second time that they've tried this. So this is Hayabusa 2. Hayabusa 1 was launched quite a few years ago, and it was doing a very, very similar thing, going to an asteroid to take some samples and bring them back. And that mission was a partial success. So this is the second attempt, and this one so far has been a fantastic success. It's obviously still got a long way to go. As well as collecting the samples, as was said in the report there, which is more of a sort of, it's a very light touchdown. They're not actually landing on the surface and staying there. The idea is to go down very, very gently, get some samples from the surface, and then take off again straight away. And one of the reasons for that is because the surface of this asteroid, there's a lot of rubble there, there's a lot of rocks and things, so it's not really somewhere you can send a rover because it's quite dangerous terrain. But it's also, there's not a lot of gravity there. So sending a traditional kind of rover to go and do sample collection is really, really hard. So what they have here is something that just lands very, very softly, collects some samples, and then takes off again. So it stays up in the sky in the orbit around the asteroid, where it's much, much safer. And then it's going to do it again. So later on in the mission, it's going to fire a much bigger projectile into the surface. So the projectile it used this time was only about 5 grams, I think. The next time it tries this, it's going to launch a 2.5 kilogram projectile into the surface before it goes down to collect the samples. And the reason to do that is what they collected this time, what they did last night, was they collected surface material, the surface regolith. And that's material that is made up of the asteroid itself, but also material that has been modified over billions of years while this asteroid has been in space by what's called space weathering. And that can tell you a lot about the asteroid, but that material is modified slightly from what it originally was when the asteroid formed 4.5 billion years ago in the formation of the early solar system. So if we want some of that early material to tell us about how the solar system originally formed 4.5 billion years in the past, we need some of the subsurface material underneath that regolith. So what they do with this 2.5 kilogram projectile is they make a hole, they basically make an artificial crater in the asteroid and go back down and take samples from that material.
So how quickly can we expect some findings from all of this?
Well, the samples will be stored in airtight containers inside the spacecraft itself, so they'll be stored safely. It's going to carry on doing its mission for, I think, until at least the end of this year. So it's also deploying some rovers on the asteroid, which are, again, as I say, not traditional rovers in the sense of that they have wheels and they roll around on the surface. They have tiny little reaction wheels and thrusters, and they basically hop around on the surface in the very low gravity environment. And they're going to take pictures of where the samples have been taken as well for context for the scientists when the samples get back. So that's all going to carry on over the next few months. And then it's going to leave the asteroid at the end of the year, is the schedule at the moment, and then it should get back to Earth a year after that. And the samples will land probably somewhere in a nice desert region where there's no people for safety, and hopefully the samples will land intact, and then those will be taken to laboratories and will be opened in clean room environments for analysis. So it could be a few years before we get really serious results back from the chemistry.
I'd love to get your thoughts as well on on Israel launching its first moon mission. It's privately funded. Is this the sort of thing that we could see more of?
I think so, yes. I mean, this was fueled by the Google Lunar X Prize quite some years ago now, and nobody actually won the Google Lunar X Prize at the time. But it still catalyzed an awful lot of activity from private companies that had never before had the impetus to actually go and try these kind of space missions. And I think in the future it's going to go this way because governments are less reluctant to spend these large sums of money on these massive programs. Companies can do it in a much more agile way, as SpaceX are proving. They built fully reusable rockets, and in fact, this mission was sent up on one of SpaceX's launches. So, I think the future is quite bright for commercial spaceflight.
OK, Dr. Megan Argo, lecturer in astronomy at the University of Central Lancashire. Thanks very much for your time today.
Sure.
It's time now for a look at the weather forecast as we head into the weekend. Here's Mel Coles. Hi, Mel.
Thanks, Anita. Good morning. Well, for many of us, it's another fine spring-like day, but we have got some lingering fog patches around. They're showing up quite nicely on the satellite picture down towards the south of England. We've also got more cloud for Northern Ireland, western areas of Scotland too. Elsewhere, though, we are seeing lengthy spells of sunshine, albeit hazy. At times quite blustery for Northern Ireland and the Western Isles in particular. But across the board, it feels mild. Temperatures well above average for the time of year. Highs between 13 and 16 Celsius. North East England, North Wales, North Devon. Here we could see 17, possibly 18 Celsius. Heading into this evening, the winds strengthen further for Northern Ireland and the Western Isles, where we could have gusts around 55 miles an hour. Clear skies, lighter winds elsewhere. We could see the return of some low cloud mist and fog for eastern England. Not a particularly cold start to Saturday morning, but once again, some of that mist and low cloud may linger, taking a while to clear. More cloud with outbreaks of patchy rain working its way into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, gradually working its way a little bit further eastwards as we head through the day. But for many, it's another fine looking day, lengthy spells of sunshine and still very mild.
Join Simon McCoy as he brings you the top stories live.
The ball is entirely in the UK's court. We could have got our tennis correspondent to report on this.
The latest in sport.
Heaven knows how they're dealing with this on the court.
The heat or the wind? I'm not quite sure.
Well, both.
The day's weather.
It's getting colder.
And undeniable chemistry.
He's still laughing.
We have to talk to each other.
There's only one Simon.
So you're the real McCoy.
Afternoon Live with Simon McCoy, weekdays at 2 p.m. on the BBC News Channel.
As Black Panther and Vice take on the might of Roma, who will emerge as the favourite from the awards season finale? The results, the reaction, and everything you need to know from the biggest night of the film calendar. The Oscars 2019 Results Show, Monday morning at 9:30 on the BBC News Channel.
Hello, good morning. This is BBC Newsroom Live with me, Anita McVeigh. The headlines.